recent events in government, I felt I had no choice but to come forward and speak on some issues. These are my perspectives based on my information, research into our very Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, and just now as we all pledged the flag, every one of us just pledged allegiance to a republic, not a democracy. That is the main point of this whole, sorry, really kind of nervous. I'm going to be sticking to speaking on something that I've prepared written, because if I ad-lib on this, we could go on for hours. And I'd ask any questions, just hold them, write them down. I will stick around afterwards to address any questions that may come up. As with any discussion on government, I feel the most important place to start is with the form of that government. The founders of this country established a constitutional republic as the form our governmental structure would hold. They separated that government into 3 equal branches, as they understood the nature of corruption of the history of power. The American government is not a democracy, as many believe, and people only believe that because leaders have been standing on the grand stage, claiming that their efforts were to make the world safe for democracy, as if that's the form our government was. Rome was a true democracy. In a true democracy, it's essentially mob rules. Any issue can be brought to a vote, and the majority would win the issue, the minority completely lose it. In a true democracy like the Roman Empire, slavery could be brought to a vote and reinstated. The key difference between a democracy and a constitutional republic, is that there are specific issues the majority were not permitted to bring to a vote in a constitutional republic. Those issues specifically relate to the Bill of Rights. It does not matter how many people band together, our rights cannot be voted away, because they are inalienable. Our rights are as natural to humanity as the nature of Earth's rotation around the sun. Some of the most divinely inspired words were spoken in the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. Among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. The pursuit of happiness also contains within it the inherent right to own property and allodium. Not many people know what the word allodial title means today. That's really disturbing. The American people desire to acquire, utilize, and own their own land without interference from any government, including the government of the United States of America. And even though many tricks have been employed to make people forget about this principle, allodial title still exists even today. A car can be owned in allodium as any plot of land, because it is actually the physical materials of the earth that make up the wealth and construction of that vehicle. All true wealth comes from the ground in one way or another. I'll touch on that more a little bit later. After the Declaration of Independence, the American Revolution, and the Treaty of Peace with Great Britain, the American people became complete sovereign freeholders in the land with the same prerogative as the king. The king had no further claim to the land and could not tax or otherwise encumber it. Every American became as sovereign as the king over their own property. This is not just important, it is vital to understand the sovereignty of America. All rights in this country are bestowed upon mankind by their Creator, for the very nature of their humanity. Whatever faith a person follows, or even if they follow no faith, the fact of your existence is evidence of your inherent inalienable rights. Sovereignty itself is a very misunderstood concept. It's only usually heard when speaking of the several states' sovereignty or Native American land. The fact is that every American is as sovereign as the king was. Sovereignty simply means that there is no higher authority to seek permission from to engage in an activity. All sovereignty in America derives from property. While a person cannot own another, everyone has exclusive ownership over themselves. You have sovereign property the day you were born into this world. There is no higher authority to seek permission from regarding anything to do with your property, whatever form that property may take. If I own a hammer and I decide to melt that hammer and turn it into a formless piece of metal, that's my sovereign decision. There is no higher authority to seek permission from to do that. So the sovereign is a person of highest authority over a given piece of property, the owner. Owner and sovereign are virtually synonymous, if not completely. No one person or group of people, regardless of the size of that group, may exercise any decision over another person's property. This fact has enormous ramifications and is almost completely forgotten in today's society. The majority cannot vote on or affect another person's property any more than they can vote another person's inherent rights away. Inherent rights today conflict with a great deal of legislation that has been passed by those who represent Congress. The representatives themselves are not Congress. Every one of us are Congress. They just represent us. As a representative of Geico, or do they just represent the company? The entire Bill of Rights we have today derives from the self-evident truth that mankind is endowed by his Creator with inalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. There are also unenumerated rights, which are so essential to liberty that the people feared enumerating them, realizing that they were imperfect men. Our leaders did not want an essential right denied to the people. This is why we have the Ninth Amendment. And the 10th Amendment was designed to limit the power of government. Our founders did not want to replace the old king with a new king. They wanted no king at all. You have a right to determine your own bedtime. It is not enumerated in the Bill of Rights, but it is so essential to liberty that it cannot be denied to the people. The right to travel freely of one's own free will is also an unenumerated right. Personal choice and control of locomotion is such a necessary part of liberty that our founders did not enumerate it. Nonetheless, it is recognized and protected. Licensure is an issue I must discuss as it relates directly to sovereignty and inherent rights in such a degree that it cannot be overlooked in today's world. License to do something is in fact permission to engage in a behavior, which is a privilege that can be granted or withdrawn at any time. It is subject to the discretion of government. I do not care what law exists that may contradict this point. No human, at least in America, requires a license of any kind to engage in any activity they have a right to engage in. People in this country have a right to engage in any behavior that does not cause actual damage or injury or actual violation of another person's rights. The First Amendment to the Constitution guarantees people the right to speak on any subject. It also guarantees people the right to their own religious affairs and beliefs. There is no higher authority in government to seek permission from regarding anyone's religious beliefs. It's not apparent today, but this is true of every right spelled out in the Constitution and unenumerated rights. No human in America would ever accept license or acknowledge a license to worship, or should they? The Second Amendment guarantees every American the right to keep and bear arms. Concealed carry firearms are a place where government may regulate, but this does not mean to micromanage, simply to keep regulating. No one has an inherent right to conceal a weapon. To keep and bear, to display it openly, is the right of every American, which there is no higher authority in government to seek permission from to exercise its right. There are most likely numerous laws that will claim the contrary, but any law that conflicts with the Constitution is in fact not law. It is null and void. Personal locomotion in an automobile or traveling with one's own free will is also an unenumerated right. This does not hang precariously on a few decisions, but that the Supreme Court has held in an impressive array of cases that I will cite shortly. As with the right to worship, there is no higher authority to seek permission from to engage in the right to travel or to operate your own automobile or horse-drawn carriage. The requirement of a license to drive has become the conventional wisdom of our day. It is not legally required unless you're using your car for commerce. The government may regulate or keep regular commerce. A sovereign person who owns their own car does not need permission to do anything they choose with their property. And the right to travel can be no more legally impaired with a license requirement than the right to worship freely can. License, plates, registration, insurance, and inspections are all requirements with no legal force of law unless your car is used for commerce or hire. Personally, I recommend at least basic liability insurance, unless you're prepared to personally pay out for any damages you may cause by accident. With the exercise of sovereign rights comes the exercise of sovereign responsibility. It's your responsibility to not cause damage or injury, and if you do, to repair the damage you've done. No person has a right to use the roads